Hello, I want to talk to you a little bit about the management response cycle. Now, one of the things I've been teaching a lot on lately is emotional intelligence because as I've been doing the research on what's going on with the current workforce and the inadequacies that I'm seeing in the current workforce and even leadership that's trying to lead this new workforce, it really comes down to emotional intelligence. So, I want to teach you a little bit of something that I've adapted that's actually used in behavioral therapy sessions very often. But I've adapted it for you to help your staff learn and for you as well to learn. That is a game changer if we all really understand how to master this. Now, I'm going to use my whiteboard here for illustration. So, excuse my lack of fine motor skills. I probably didn't go to a great preschool when I was young because I don't have the best fine motor skills. But again, thank you so much for joining. My name is Evelyn Knight, and I just love helping people in business learn how to be more successful business owners and leaders. So, today we're going to talk about what happens when a situation occurs. Now, in our society right now, I think one of the biggest things I hear most often is employee attendance. That has to be the hardest thing that we deal with, right? The amount of call outs we get is like nothing we've ever seen before. And to be honest, many employees don't care if they get fired any longer. So attendance policies no longer work like they used to. So that is going to be our situation. It's going to be a call out, right? That situation is neutral. Some employees call out for the craziest things. We've had employees call out to go to the mall. And there's also some who call out for very legitimate reasons, like their child is in the hospital. But the situation itself is neutral. There's no emotion attached to it. At 5 a.m., I have emotion attached to it. When I get my walkie-talkie app that my staff and I use ringing and it says so and so called in again today, or just so and so called in, period, my first thought is, are you kidding me? Another call out, right? And let's say last week we had three, and let's say there's the stomach flu going through the center or whatever. I don't want three people with the stomach flu showing up to work, right? But I am going to attach feelings onto the fact that somebody this week is calling out already. And sometimes I'm not always going to be very fair about my assessment, right? Because I am forming the next step, which is a perspective. So now I have formed a perspective on the situation that is happening. Now that let's say that's number one. Step two is going to be this part isn't always accurate. The personal life experience is not always accurate. But I know last week I already got irritated and might have had to take measures to keep up with all the call outs. And so now I'm coming from a place of already being irritated, right? So now what's happening is because I've already had to deal with this so much this week, I am irritated, right? And my perspective is I can't believe this person is calling in. Can't we get anyone to show up on time? Now, let me ask you something. I really want you to remember our situations are neutral. Okay. They're not good or bad. I know for many of you leaders, this one feels bad because we don't like experiencing callouts. But now let's put ourselves in that employee's shoes. They probably feel like they have a very good reason. Let's put our shoes of an employee who, let's say their child is extremely sick and they have to take them to the hospital. I am using real life scenarios that I've been through, by the way, too. So, and This is literally real life things I've personally been through. And I've coached staff through very similar things. So basically, their perspective is going to be completely different than mine, right? So now I am forming thoughts. Again, I apologize for my fine motor skills there. I am forming thoughts that are stemming from my perspective. The situation is neutral. My perspective is defining the situation. And that is causing me to form thoughts. Those thoughts, the racing thought I have, like, I can't believe I'm dealing with this again. When is my staff finally going to show up to work? Just 1 week. I wish just for 1 week they would show up to work. Those are the thoughts that are going through my head, right? Based on my perspective. I'll get back to my thought I was just having. Now, those thoughts are causing emotions. I'm anxious and I'm angry. I don't want to be awake. I'm not a morning person. I don't want to be awake right now. If I am awake at 5 a.m., that is my sacred quiet time where I just do my devotional, my prayer time, yoga. I just really center myself. It's my me time. So I do not want people to bother me during that time. I am very fiercely protective of this time. So now my emotions are angry. I'm angry. I don't like that this is happening. So I'm going to respond. Now, my response is formed by all of these things, right? And I may respond in a very dumb way. Just fire them. I am so sick and tired of these people calling in again and again. I am done. The next person who calls in is fired, period. Period. Or I might send a nasty text to the person who called in. Are you serious? Do you really need to call in for work? Really? You're the fourth person this week. I'm just not buying it, right? Just reacting in a very inappropriate way. Let's say, oh, look at that glare. Let's move this a little bit to try and fix that glare from our response there. So now we've responded in a way that maybe isn't the best. And so the next thing we're going to do is that response is what's causing our outcomes. Now imagine if right here we paused. This is where we need the pause, right? By the way, all of this happens in a matter of 2 seconds, 2 to 5 seconds, right? So what if you get the call out and instead of responding, you pause? Something I like to do is just count to at least 5 in my head. And when I say 5, I don't mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You get the picture. And the reason I do this is because I understand that I really need to watch where my thoughts are going to go. I cannot allow my perspective to take control of my thoughts. I have to keep control of my perspective. So when I give that time, instead of thinking in my amygdala here, which is my caveman brain, I can give time for my frontal lobe where I want to be thinking, the time to kick in. And I can stop responding in a way I regret. I want you to think of a time that you really misjudged a situation. It could be personal or leadership. And you reacted, maybe sent an inappropriate text or snapped at someone, and then later had to apologize because you just didn't take the time in the beginning to get all the facts. That's exactly what this is. Instead of waiting and checking your perspective, you reacted, right? And all of this happened so quickly that now you're dealing with consequences that maybe you didn't like or maybe you didn't want. So, if you want to avoid that, and if you really want to level up as a leader, you're going to pause. You're really going to pause and ask myself, okay, really, what kind of emotions or thoughts am I tying to this situation? How much of it is true? How much are my thoughts, is my perspective true? How sure can I be? Right? Yeah, it's annoying, but maybe it's legitimate. And maybe I have a really big staff and I just need to expect daily call outs. That's just normal when you have a bigger staff. As your companies grow, it's going to happen. Maybe it's your leadership. Is there something you're doing? You're not holding your staff accountable. Maybe you're not giving them enough incentives to show up. What is it that's going on that's causing that to happen? Right? So now check your thoughts. Where am I allowing my thoughts to go? One of the biggest mistakes I see is that people don't check their thoughts. They just let their brain take control, right? I'm studying a book right now that's called How to Perform Self Brain Surgery by Dr. Warren, and it's fascinating because he talks about how you do have control over all of this. You have control over so many things in your life. And this is really the key, just analyzing your thoughts, right? And I mean, it goes into a lot more than just that. But if you can really learn that pause and sit with your thoughts and really, really take this part here and start analyzing it. How true is this really? How helpful are these thoughts to me? What would happen if I wasn't having these thoughts? How would things change? How could I reframe it to make them a lot better for me? Now imagine if you also taught this concept to your teachers. I just completed a teacher training a couple weeks ago where I went through this entire thing with them, right? Any employees, regardless of what industry you're in, or your cashiers, whatever, right? Imagine teaching them this, where you could have a parent come in just yelling about my child didn't bring their sippy cup home. Your dad said what you know you did, right? And if you could just really check and pause. In childcare, I know a lot of times teachers change how they view a child and they place a lot of blame on the children. And that's something that I like to make my teachers and anybody I train pause and see. Like, what if your thoughts were different? What if your emotions were different? Working with people can be hard. And there's a lot of misinterpreting that we all do. And we need to remember that our interpretations are formed based on our experiences. Our experiences are very limited. Now, I have a neurological disease. And when I was first diagnosed with that, well, it was actually before my diagnosis when things were getting really weird and bad for me. Somebody actually started a rumor that they thought I was an alcoholic. Now, if you know anything about me, that is really laughable. I actually, when I became a mother, I made a very, very extreme decision. Now, I was raised by an alcoholic. So I decided that I would not have a sip of alcohol from the time my first son was born until the time my youngest child was 18 years old. Now, I've never been an alcoholic. I just made that decision because of my childhood wounding, right? That's a very extreme situation. I decided not even to have a sip of wine. And gosh, my kids are 5 years apart. So 23 years. My perspective was formed on my childhood wounding, my limited experiences, right? That a parent cannot drink and be a good parent. Very limited perspective and experiences, which caused my thoughts as a young mom to be I cannot be a good parent and have an occasional glass of wine. Now, for most of you, you know that's ridiculous, right? But that's where this extreme example fits perfectly because most of you can see how my thoughts were kind of ridiculous at that point. I had emotional reaction. My emotions of being wounded as a child caused me to respond in a way that, okay, you should never drink around your kids, right? Or, well, I mean, you shouldn't, even if I didn't drink around my kids, it didn't matter. I could have been on vacation with my late husband for 10 days. Well, I never went away that long, but you know what I mean. And I still wouldn't have had a drink because I didn't believe a parent should drink well until their child was 18 and grown. So, what was the outcome? I don't know. Good, bad, who knows, right? But in the situation I started with, as somebody who had neurological disease, I, by the way, have narcolepsy. So I was falling asleep and passing out all over the place. So rumors started going around that I was drinking, started by one person. That person was raised by an alcoholic. Well, in her experience, she was also married to an alcoholic. In her experience, alcoholics pass out. So that must be the explanation for me. So think about situations are neutral. I was passing out, I was falling asleep a lot. Her perspective, her life, her limited life experiences, she'd never dealt with somebody who has a neurological disease.